try.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Friday, May 8th, 2026 at 1:03 in the afternoon. So we're here first to take a look at the amendment. 639. The genetic testing bill. It's passed the Senate with a proposal of amendment. Will be on notice on Tuesday, so get ahead of the curve and take a look at the amendment and kind of figure out which way we want to go. So Rick, if you could with that.
I would love to. Good morning. Good afternoon. Rick Sagel, Office with Legislative Counsel. I'm going to pull up the amendment. Let's see here. So it is an instance of amendment, which means the underlying bill was passed by the Senate with a couple of changes. Okay. Okay, so the two instances, and I can pull up the bill as it passed the House to compare it to. The first instance was mostly technical. The original language we're looking at as it passed the House in the, let's see, subsection D. This is the data security and access portion of the bill. And the language as it passed the House read that genetic data or biometric data of consumers shall only be transferred or stored outside the US with the express consent of the consumer. And I think that was not intentional. The bill does define biometric data, but that is under the umbrella of publicly available information. And I think it was just a mistake, not intentional for that type of data to be restricted. This bill is about biological samples, genetic data, not about biometric data, which includes genetic data and other things, fingerprints, iris, scans, those things. So the fix, as the Senate saw it, was that genetic data and biological samples of consumers shall. A is the same. A is how it read in the House version. And B is also the same, but the intro text, instead of genetic data and biological samples, was genetic data and biometric data. So really, long story short, replacing for B, biometric data with biological samples, so they align. And I spoke with Todd Delos with the AG's office, and just looking at other states, this appears to be what the purpose of the language is. The second instance is more substantive. This is in the enforcement section. You may remember, as it passed the House, the Genetic Data Information Privacy Act.
Yeah, so regarding the stored within the territorial boundaries of any country currently sanctioned. Oh, okay, never mind. Well, no, only transferred or stored outside of the United States. Because we do have a lot of situations where people are working outside of the United States, accessing information on individuals, obviously here. Does that have any issues?
So possibly, but the companies are, mostly going to be United States companies. They don't have to be, but either way, they would need to store, no matter where you are as a consumer, it would need to be stored in the US unless you express a consent to it being transferred or stored outside the US. So a Vermonter could consent to that, but they would just have to do that.
Right, but if someone is remoting into a desktop or a computer? Would
It
that be
wouldn't,
considered?
it would know, it's the company, not the consumer. So the company would, no matter where the
Oops,
consumer
sorry.
is, that's okay. Is that rebooting? Are we?
No, no. Okay. Uh, I can take it offline and ask you if you, if that's because I'm not sure if I'm making any sense in what I'm saying. But if I go to Canada, right, and I remote into a desktop, right, is that, would that me being outside of Canada or outside of the US accessing information that's technically stored in the US?
Are you the consumer?
No, but I'm accessing data that is on the consumer that lives in Vermont.
So you're someone working for the company that is
Correct.
accessing. Okay, okay. Um, so as a company employee, you would be transferring data outside the US. Um, Let me look at the definition of genetic data. Genetic data means any data, regardless of its format, that results from the analysis of a biological sample from a consumer or another element enabling equivalent information to be obtained and concerns genetic material. Um, and so yes, it could be computerized data, I guess is the answer. And if you are working for a company that is outside the US, or if you're working for Ancestry, right, but you're an employee outside the US, would that be deemed transferring genetic data outside the US? I would say yes, and the consumer would need to consent to that.
You may want to pin this for further discussion.
Not what we passed.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I get that, but
This
just something I
specific
caught.
to where data is stored, not transmitted. So as long as it was stored on a server in the United States, wouldn't that qualify?
But it does say only be transferred or stored.
So I see the point, obviously stored, I think, is not going to be an issue. So maybe the transferred. Um, I think the intent of the language is that the data is in the US.
Right.
And it's being transferred permanently on a more permanent basis, not just over accessing it via an internet network.
But that tends to be the implication to me anyway, that, I mean, maybe it could be improved, but transferred outside seems to imply that the data is in the US to begin with.
Right.
And that makes sense to me.
It's not blocking anything from happening. It's just saying you have to tell somebody that you're moving the information
Gotta
to a
get their
foreign
consent.
country,
But the-
right?
Get consent.
Yeah,
It's an issue for the company if they want to hire somebody outside the US.
They can do that.
They can do that, and that person can only work on files that the consumer is given consent to be able to be transferred.
And part of the reasoning that I'm thinking of is enforceability issues and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to enforce a security arrangement, for data inside the US. So that's why you would, if it goes outside, that's why, you should consent. So,
You could strike out the words be transferred or just, I guess, transferred or
No,
like
I just
subdivision
I
A.
just wanted to point it out as something that we may want to, just something to point it out. That's all, as a concern.
yeah, I just assumed it originated in the US to begin with. And I mean, I like I'll think about it.
I appreciate the what if, and we've had people from the companies that do this testify that this language was okay for them. So I'm not concerned that it's a real issue, right? Like sometimes what ifs take us to a place that's better, and sometimes a what if is just a what if. And so that's, I think, for the businesses to come back to us to say that they need us to look at it again.
Not a problem.
Okay, the second instance, as I was discussing, is the enforcement mechanism. You may remember, as it passed the House, this bill falls under the Vermont Consumer Protection Act, and it was pretty straightforward. A violation of this is an unfair and disaffecting commerce, calling into play Section 2453, and then giving the AG rulemaking and the authority to investigate, conduct civil actions, et cetera. The Senate decided to, and you may remember you considered a cure period briefly in this committee. So they decided to adopt a version of what you were doing. One of your drafts that you considered had a very narrow cure period, only for certain types of violations, privacy policies. Nothing about, for example, storing genetic data outside the US. That was not, just an example, that was not going to be a curable thing under the draft in this committee. The Senate decided to take any violation of the act, which would include the storage issues, but then also any other failure to get consent to do something, would be subject to a 60-day cure period. So a consumer that pursues a civil action for a violation of the subchapter before initiating the civil action, send a written notice to the company or service provider that includes as many details as possible. 2, if the company or service provider does not cure the alleged violation within 60 days after the notice is received, or if there is a disagreement as to whether the violation has been cured, the consumer shall have the right to initiate a civil action pursuant to 2461B, which is again in the Consumer Protection Act. So that was adopted by the Senate, and those are the two instances of amendment.
And if I remember the conversation back here, there were a few reasons why we didn't want to include a cure period, maybe kind of interrelated reasons.
No, he said he might have one.
I think he's using as he would join them.
And I think the beginning thought was that this was really important stuff. It's core private information. This would not be the type of thing that you think about a cure. And in any case, the sort of logistics of the thing, if there's it's possible you'd have a 6-day window when the data is just out there hanging around. And number one, that might be happening, and number two, you can't cure that. It's out there. So personally, I would not be in favor of cure for the reasons that we talked about.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm in favor of this. This is kind of what I voted no in the first place. For me, the reasoning behind it, why I like the cure period, is it gets the business out of panic mode. This doesn't, I appreciate the point of the actual genetic data, but this strikes me as something that covers additional items that may or may not necessarily be that serious. And that's more why I'm in support of the amendment.
I remember that, and that's why I think when we were talking about a cure at all, we were trying to distinguish between the kinds of violations, whether it was the big ticket kind of thing or whether it was so-called technical. And so, but what I'm reading, this is it doesn't distinguish between the really important stuff and the technical stuff.
60 days longer than we had been contemplating?
Right?
Yeah, I thought we had something
30.
like 30 and
15.
I think it's 15.
Okay, it seemed, because the panic mode part, I appreciate. I think I was feeling the same way as you, that I didn't see I couldn't find my way around saying, well, there shouldn't be one at all. 60 seems like a lot. I wouldn't mind it being shorter, but it seems like if something's wrong, it seems like it's not gonna be that hard to fix it, but I don't mind giving people like a week or something, 2 weeks to do it. 2 months feels like a bunch. And I don't know if we have cure periods elsewhere. I know we took a cure period out of 71. I can't remember what it was. I don't think it was 60 days. Or didn't 71 have it?
That was an AG cure period. So
Oh,
it's just the Attorney General cure period. And you're talking about 71 as it passed the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was I think, initial 60-day cure period for a certain amount of time, and then that would eventually go away. They would consider cures on an optional basis, but there's so many versions of 71, so I can't. But that as it passed the Senate,
Thank you. That's the one I was.
there,
going for.
yes, there was a 60-day, yes.
The number seems a little too long to me.
Yeah, 60-day cure period seemed really over the top. Plus, I like a version where if there was going to be a cure period where there's a cure period just for the more technical kinds of things and not for the, misuse of genetic data. So I don't know. I mean, I 60-day cure period for everything seems to really undermine.
So,
Oh, I was gonna say, if I remember from the testimony, which I've got a lot of other testimony in my head from other bills, but if I remember from that, there was a little discussion around, I mean, if a consumer starts to pursue a civil action, they're going to get notice of that civil action, right? And seems like that processes would include them perhaps coming back and saying, oops, we can fix this right away, right? And that then it would be pursued away. So I wonder if it's actually necessary to have that, because they sort of get their notice when they get that first notice. And I suspect that all parties concerned would want to find a solution to the problem rather than it going through full civil action. That's how egregious it is.
so sounds like we have an issue with the cure period. Either some don't think we need one, others think that it's too long, not set on the right pieces. But genetic data, I don't know what people think. I don't think anybody thinks we should have a cure period for that, because once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put it back in. There's other technical aspects to it. Maybe. We're getting kind of late. We know what kind of problems Senate Economic Development's already having. We send this back over with a further proposal of amendment, whether or not they'll have time to deal with it. So I would suggest that we not concur. And we ask for a committee conference. So,
That's a good idea.
Need a motion? So moved.
I'll second it.
it's been moved by Representative Olson, second by Representative Duke, that we not concur. And that we ask for a committee conference to try to work this out. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. And is Dave on, do we know? Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have 902.
Stuck against it.
10-01.
Oh, no, no, oh,
Emily's
yeah.
not here.
Oh, Emily. Oh, yeah.
You confident?
Abby and Jonathan convinced me that maybe it's too long.
902.
So her
No,
view,
it's
uh,
1001.
1001.
No, we don't have
We don't have
that.
Emily or Dave.
Oh,
902.
902.
Okay.
So her view, you were the reporter, okay, so this will come up Wednesday. So, report what the changes were and.
Yes.
Due to the, I think the lack of time that we have left.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so after I explain the changes, that's request, make a formal request.
Yeah.
For committee.
So we moved that we.
Yeah.
Do not concur.
Not concur.
That's
That a
for
committee accounts.
viewpoint. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Let's now jump on to S71. You gotta
Much
get,
easier, Bill.
gotta get Rick out of, Rick,
Sure.
be out of here by 2:10, so.
Thank you. Okay, so once again, Rick Sagal with the Office of Legislative Counsel, sharing my screen, draft 3.3 that I sent just a little bit ago, was finishing some small edits to it. So, yellow highlights on this draft reflect changes from 2.3. And as best I can, I will explain the changes, may have to rely on Rep. Priestley for some of the explanations of why it was done. I listened to your committee testimony yesterday, trying to understand where the committee was going. That was helpful. Thank you for having a conversation. So I couldn't be here to listen to it and provide any type of information, but it sounds like you all made a few decisions that are reflected in this update. Okay, so I'm just going to go down to the highlights. I encourage everybody, including those online, to read the updated draft. And because sometimes you miss something that is not highlighted, because it was highlighted last time. So make sure you read it and you're comfortable with what you are seeing in this draft. The first change is on page 3, collect. Adding language to the definition of collect. So it still means buying, renting, gathering, obtaining, receiving, or accessing any personal data by any means. And then kind of narrowing it, other than such activities between a controller and a processor, or between, and its subcontractors. So kind of limiting that definition of collect a little bit. Collect, that language was in the bill before, the subdivision B, just separating it out from A, so it's not confusing.
Want me to give context for things or just wait
Well, I
ask
think-
for context?
I think it'd be nice to know, where the language is, this Connecticut 2025 language.
Yeah, so this is because our data min standard is updating to where Connecticut was trying to copy California,
Mhm.
basically. So we're working on from those two bases of trying to create our own thing there. That definition needs to be, this needs to be updated. So this is, I believe this is California, since that's what everybody's trying to base that off of. And then the line that was highlighted is it's a thing that has been flagged by industry, big tech and other places, that this is a requirement of needing to be in this definition. So that is
Okay.
to not upset our industry folks.
Is what they request.
So it's sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
It's specific to consumers, right? You're not talking about the business to business collecting that they do.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my read of it, at least. Okay, and then B, again, no change, just reorganizing that definition. 7A, updating the definition of consent. Consent means any freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous indication of the consumer's wishes by which the consumer, including by statement or by a clear affirmative action, signifies agreement to the collection or processing of personal data related to the consumer for a narrowly defined particular purpose.
Now I understand what. Sorry. So because we're updating our data minimization, we're updating our definition of processing and processor, which we're going to get to, which means that is why we have to have that other than such activities for industry. So those things don't conflict. That's, that was that. Sorry. I was mixing up my updates.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, for me too.
Okay, the next change on page 5. So when I highlight a number, it means something was deleted. We have deleted contextual advertising, and I'll let Rep. Priestley explain. Several of the advertising provisions have been removed or adjusted.
We covered this a little bit yesterday. We rolled back all of the targeted, like the targeted advertising definition itself is updated to match Connecticut, which matches everybody else basically. And because of that, we removed all the first party definitions, all of the contextual marketing, something, there was a marketing thing, and then unique persistent identifiers, marketing measurements,
Yes.
and then unique persistent identifiers definitions.
Right, the next change on page 7 of the draft.
Can I get back just a second? So you're removing the contextual.
Yeah, we
For the purpose of,
that it was only used generally in the definition and how target advertising was applied. So because we don't use contextual advertising, first party advertising, marketing measurement, unique persistent identifier, and the definition of targeted advertising, we're removing all those. Because they're otherwise not used.
so we're narrowing or expanding targeted advertising.
We are making it what everyone is already adhering to from a national perspective, more even just than regional.
Now I understand.
So,
There's mud.
but no, people testified that our language was
Yeah.
novel and
Yes.
it would cause confusion. And
Correct.
so we're saying, we don't want to cause confusion. We will use national language in these definitions rather than bringing new things in.
And national language doesn't include contextual advertising.
Yes. Thanks, team.
Okay, on page 7, this is the removal of the definition of first-party data, another advertising term that is no longer used, so that definition was also removed. Okay, on page 8, adding the definition of hybrid entity, which is going to be referred to in the exemption section, so getting to that here in a little bit. It means the same thing as it means in HIPAA. Also on page 8, is the marketing measurement definition was deleted again because that provision about targeted advertising in that context was removed. That definition can be removed. Page 9, neural data, matching Connecticut 2025. There was a definition of neural data that was in 71. It didn't match Connecticut's. There's a choice to match Connecticut's here. Okay, moving on. Connecticut 2025, if I didn't say that. Page 10, the definition of process and processing. So where you see the use highlighted, there used to be the collection, comma, the use. So striking the word collection, so that's no longer included in the definition of processing. 40 processor, adding the word collect. So it means a person who collects or processes. And previously it was just processes.
Can you help me understand the shifts there, 39 and 40, just how?
So mostly it's clarity. So when we get to the data minimization, we say processing, collects and processing. And sometimes there's a claim that that's redundant. And so trying to separate those two things so that both words can be used for the definition of process.
It makes sense to me because processes.
Processing is like everything but collecting. So collecting is like taking in the data and processing is like everything else.
So I'm making sure I'll be keeping my processing different, separate from my processor.
Yes. So a processor is somebody who processes, and in this case, collects. Yeah.
So if you took it out of 39, you got to put it somewhere, like so that collection is included. I'm just trying to make sure.
Yes. Yeah. So it used to be in the definition. Yes. So we took it out, and yes. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, in 40, the definition of processor, removing the subdivision C, which was a federal, state, tribal, or local government entity, because those are exempted later on in the bill. Striking out that definition here made sense to reduce confusion. All right, page 11, no change, page 12, no change. Page 13, no change, 14. 15, looking at the definition of sensitive data. Striking a couple of the elements that amounts to sensitive data. That would be keystrokes. And at the very bottom, so keystrokes was K, which was kind of fun. We lost the alliteration. No other care about what that is. But then N was also struck. N was the online activities of a consumer over time and across devices, websites, online applications, and mobile applications that do not share common branding or data generated by profiling performed on such data. And I will defer to Rep. Priestley on why that was struck.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, just being insensitive data, and then going to what needs to be protected and minimized, and then also how it interacts with targeted advertising. This was hearing industry business concerns about that interfering with how analytics on websites work and how retargeting works and things like that, and how moving from your cell phone to your computer and using apps on different things and iPads and all the different devices, how those kind of advertising being served on one and not the other one, and making sure that you're not getting duplicate ads from one device to the other.
Yeah, I'm not really understanding the reference to device in that.
It's your on.
It's, and this removes that.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question while we're in this section. Date of birth is not one of the items in sensitive data, right? Like
It's personal, I think.
okay,
I think it's personal data.
because we have talked about it a number of times, and I just want to make sure that it's not sensitive, it's not in here as sensitive. And I keep reading through it to look for it, and I haven't seen it, and I just want to make sure that I'm not missing.
Yeah, let's go up to personal data here. So it's any information that is linked or reasonably linkable alone or in combination with other information to identified or identifiable individual. So yes, that would be obviously date of birth would be personal data, but it's not sensitive data. Do you want it to be sensitive data?
No.
Okay, well, geez.
For the love of God, no.
Not
Sensitive data provided that the date of birth is
right.
80 years from the effective date of this act. Okay. So we will go down to targeted advertising, and these were in the previous version, but they're new language. And I'm trying to remember.
This matches
Connecticut? Okay. I don't know.
You're all good. I'm took up.
I cannot attest that this exactly matches 2025, but that's why I said in the beginning to please use the weekend to read over the bill and ensure it matches what you want it to match. Same thing with B, targeted advertising does not include. And again, I do think this matches Connecticut 2025, but confirm. A deletion, this is the unique, so 52, it was 57 previously, but unique persistent identifier was removed, going back to the marketing terms being deleted for the most part. Unique persistent identifier. Okay, moving to the applicability section. Couple of changes here. I guess one change. I've been thinking about, I think I've mentioned to the committee, we have a lot of privacy bills moving. We have genetic data privacy, we have the data broker bill 211, and we have this bill. And one of my fears is what if the bill to lost conflict, right? And I'm sure you heard about this from lobbyists as well. So this actually is in the genetic data privacy law bill that led this committee and also was in the Senate version. And I thought this might be a good place for it. is, so in the applicability section, in the event of a conflict between the provisions of this subchapter and any other law, the provisions of the law that afford the greatest protection for the right of privacy of the consumer shall control. So in the event, my goal in all of this is to not have them conflict, right? I do not want that, but I think it's maybe inevitable. If you have a controller who's a data broker in 211, they may have to delete data because they're not exempt, right? But under this bill, maybe they are exempt. Is that a problem? I don't think it is. Honestly, you should know what you're doing if you're a data broker. However, this clarifies that in case there is that instance of like, well, the bills are not clear, I don't know what to do. Here now you should know what to do because you should delete the data, right? That provides the most privacy for consumers. I think that's the intent of the General Assembly, but it's up to you all to provide feedback and suggest a different way to handle these, I think, inevitable conflicts that are going to come up. And again, it's in genetic data privacy. So I didn't come up with this. I just was inspired by that bill having that language in it.
I love it. Anything that makes things more consistent, less confusing is always good.
And it comes down to what this is a privacy bill. And I think the intent is to provide privacy for consumers. So you just have to kind of figure out if that's an appropriate usage of words. I guess I'll put it that way.
Understanding how quickly things are moving right now. And
Federal law too, right?
Yeah.
The federal government could pass a law that would give consumers more rights than you all are going to do eventually. And you would want that one. You would want that law, obviously, to apply. And it would preempt state law, but then you could have a business say, well, I'm confused, right? And maybe legitimately, but here, hopefully. Okay. So that is subsection C in the applicability. Okay. In the exemption section, adding 3 new exemptions. These are HIPAA related. So 2A, the subchapter shall not apply to a covered entity that is not a hybrid entity. So I'm not a healthcare expert, but I've talked to Jen Carby and some of the healthcare folks. And so a hybrid entity is a entity that does have some HIPAA protected information side of their business, but they also have another side of their business. I hear CVS as an example where they have a pharmacy that has HIPAA compliance, but then they have the retail side of the store, which is obviously not HIPAA protected. So a covered entity that is not a hybrid entity. So that would not include CVS. That would not include other entities that would have a HIPAA component. B, any healthcare component of a hybrid entity. So now you have the Walmart pharmacy portion, the CVS pharmacy portion that has a healthcare component that would be exempt from data privacy law because they are complying with HIPAA. Or C, a business associate. Again, is a HIPAA term used in that world. And again, they would be compliant under HIPAA. And the goal is not to have them be compliant with this law and HIPAA. So those are 3 new exemptions. Any questions about those?
Yeah, so you worked with Jen on this, in terms.
This came from 121, actually, with 2 years ago.
We're still
Right.
working on another one of the weekends.
So just so how the rest of the committee knows, there were several of us that met with members of the healthcare community and had discussions with them this morning. And so they're waiting to see this language before they give us any opinions on it. And will come back to us with any suggested changes that they may see need to be done.
Okay, scrolling down through the exemptions on page 20, 21. A technical correction on page 21. There's a cross-reference that was 18 USC, should be 12 USC. So just replacing the 18 with the 12. 2, 3. Okay, page 24, section 2415D. These are the consumer personal data rights. Consumer rights. So kind of this was already there, but rewording it and adding language to this section. A consumer shall have the right to confirm whether or not a controller is processing the consumer's personal data and access such personal data. So this is new, including any inferences about the consumer derived from such personal data and whether a controller or processor is processing a consumer's personal data for the purposes of profiling to make a decision that produces any legal or similarly significant effect concerning the consumer. The next sentence phrase was in the last draft, unless such confirmation or access would require the controller to reveal a trade secret, and then new language again, or the controller is prohibited from disclosing such personal data under subsection E of the section.
So this is Connecticut 2025. It's generally an example of something you could think about is AI or automated systems, large language models or things like that being used to take little bits of pieces of people's information and then like making these the legal or similarly significant. So like a financial decision, a mortgage decision, a blah, 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 education decision. And then E is when you are giving somebody basically saying that like what data you're using on a decision on them, you're not putting like their social security number in an email to them and like basically compromising their privacy by confirming the information that was used to make a decision. And like I said, this is all 100% edits from Connecticut 2025. They have, you'll see quite a bit throughout this. They made a lot of adjustments when it came to data that is used in AI systems and used in profiling and used in consequential decisions on people's lives. Yeah.
Okay, moving through the rest of the consumer rights, subsection A, no changes. In B, exercising consumer rights, page 26, 2A, a consumer may designate another person to act on the consumer's behalf as the consumer's authorized agent for the purpose of exercising the consumer's rights pursuant to subsection A. So the last version had its two of the options. Let me make this right. It was A1 and A6. So we're talking about these right here. So A6 was the opt-out. So you could have an agent for the opt-out, or you can have an agent for this, the confirmation that the controller is processing your data. So the change would be all six of these. You could have an agent.
I noted that it was narrowly controlled. It was only applied to certain.
To two of them, right? So now it's right. So correcting, deleting, obtaining a copy of your data, a list of third parties that has your data, opting out of those three things, that's not changed. But again, an agent can now be hired, used on the consumer's behalf. Okay, on to page 27.
That doesn't match Connecticut. Connecticut has expanded their list, but California provides all more of the rights. And there's an area if the committee wants certain rights to not be given, we should discuss it for sure. But the idea being that people's information is on hundreds, if not thousands of different things and being able to do that all yourself versus trying to use free software and stuff is.
Okay, on to control compliance, subsection C, page 28, page 29. Third-party data, subdivision 5. This one, we're moving subdivision B. So I'm going to read the part and then the intro here and then read you what was deleted. So third-party data, a controller that has obtained personal data about a consumer from a source other than the consumer shall be deemed in compliance with the consumer's request to delete their data by, and then there was an A and a B. So this, after by, these lines are all the same. No change here. I do that right. But there was a B that said by opting the consumer out of the processing of their personal data for any purpose except for those exempted pursuant to this subchapter.
Okay, B is basically was highlighting a loophole for data brokers to be able to treat deletion requests as opt-out requests instead.
Actually, I have the, let me hide, hold on, let me show you. I just thought I can do this a little better. So this was what was removed here, B. So the controller shall be deemed in compliance with the consumer's request to delete by opting the consumer out of the processing of their data for any purpose. I'm actually a little confused by this whole subdivision. And I mentioned that offline. I don't know what this is doing because a controller, it seems to me that the purpose is for a consumer to have their information deleted. Why should it matter that where the controller got it from? And are they always going to know where they got data from? Are they going to track that information? So I just don't understand.
I'm gonna double check, spend some time on this weekend.
But yeah, B, I can't attest to being a loophole, but it was deleted. Okay, adding 6, misrepresentation. A controller shall not condition the exercise of a right under the section through, and is this Connecticut?
No, this is not connected. This is unique. This is to really hammer through that if somebody is trying to, it's kind of similar to the data broker stuff, how we were adding dark pattern stuff and hearing that people had to go through 11 different clicks to be able to remove themselves, is basically saying they shouldn't be doing any of that stuff. It's generally a dark pattern or trying to put barriers in people's way in order to exercise their rights. Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I was gonna say, because the definition of consent kind of.
Totally, yeah.
But you, I guess okay.
Yeah.
But this is a more, and Brett Booten has his hand raised, by the way. I don't know if you can see that or not. Yeah. This would be a more, for this specific section, you want there to be extra protection. Okay.
Michael?
Yeah, Rick, did you pull, I mean, this one obviously didn't come from Connecticut 2025. When you were drafting this, did you pull Connecticut 2025 or something else?
Drafting this amendment,
Yes.
I have a lot of documents in front of me when I'm drafting this bill, so I can't. Yes, I've looked at Connecticut, but this bill includes language that is not Connecticut as well, right? So the answer is yes, but also other language was also used.
Look, Michael, everything's been generally working off the bill that passed the Senate, and then adding in Connecticut 2025, adding in some of the stuff from the committee's draft. So it's the document that is like generally what I've been working off of, trying to bring stuff over, is the Senate bill as passed and then updating it.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought we were heading in the direction of more Connecticut 2025, but
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
The majority of edits is Connecticut 2025.
I apologize. Again, I was thinking that we were going to look at the differences between Connecticut 2025 and see what of that we want to pull over. It's fine. I misunderstood where we were.
This is in Connecticut 2025. It's just.
No, this is not.
But this is restated, isn't it?
No, this is unique to us. This is similarly to what we tried to do with the data broker bill.
Was this
Making sure that. No. Yeah, no.
can we flag things that, I mean, I think you're mentioning it, but I guess that's important to know, like flagging, like what is.
I mean, I think like if you
Unique.
can flag it for yourself, yeah. I mean, I just did that. Yeah, I said it was unique when
Yeah.
I started. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, page,
Be helpful. Have different colors,
Yeah.
I can do that.
so things that
Good
are,
idea.
that are outside of Connecticut twenty
The
twenty-five.
entire bill,
No, what we're doing right now.
the changes.
Changes. It'd be nice to know, understand, yellow is gonna be 2025. Color will be some additions or suggested additions. That way we'll give everybody a better understanding of which is which.
And I'm gonna assume, Rick, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that sometimes we have to be different from Connecticut 2025 because of the way it's gonna harmonize with Vermont law. Is that a fair assumption or?
I think so. What I would do is if the reason for the language is Connecticut 2025, I would say it's Connecticut 2025, even if it's not word for word. And I would maybe in my testimony say, this isn't word for word, but the goal here is to align
Perfect.
with 2025. And yes, I can,
And you can't take word for word out of Connecticut and make it work for Vermont. You have to massage it a little bit, make it work.
and I think I've made, their organization is different. I'll put that nicely. So I'm trying to make it organized and readable as much as you can. It's not easy, this type of bill, but so what I will do is, it won't be today, but over the weekend, I'll work on a version that is just, so 3.3 highlighted, just the new versions highlighted that are Connecticut 2025.
Yeah, and then if there's other pieces like this piece highlighted.
So like, okay. Should the,
We know
so
that these are new pieces that are in 3.3, but we know
other,
yellow is 2025 Connecticut and whatever other magenta or whatever other.
I like magenta. I'm a fan of magenta.
I've already used it.
I like green,
Just sky blue guy
sky
myself.
blue. So again, just to confirm, sorry.
Well, just a quick question, just so I understand, you started with 2.3,
Yes,
then deleted
yes,
things in.
yes, yes. This is 2.3 with highlights. As the
Right,
changes.
so not starting back with the.
No.
version, starting with 2.3 and subtracting an add.
Correct. So just to confirm, I will provide I'll probably just email it to you all. That just has these highlights colored differently. Okay. All right. On to page 30, the appeal section, no changes. E, this is what was referenced earlier. Subsection E, that you can't disclose certain sensitive information. No changes to that. Okay, 2415E, this is the data minimization section, A1. So what has been done here is an attempt to align with Connecticut, but also attempt to do what they maybe failed at, which was use California's rulemaking and how they've explained in kind of more common sense terms what we want controllers to do. So this one's going to be hard to highlight. Just kind of putting that out there. It's not going to be, it's a mix of Connecticut statute and California rulemaking, which is that chart I went over.
Yeah.
Was it this week? I can't remember. Yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday. That chart with California regulations are embedded in statute here. Okay, so shall limit the collection and processing of the consumer's personal data to what is reasonably necessary and proportionate to achieve the purposes for which the personal data was collected or processed as disclosed to the consumer, which shall be consistent with the reasonable expectations of the consumer pursuant to 2A. I'm going to go down to 2A here in a second because it's important. And then I, double I, Romanet II, for another disclosed purpose that is compatible with the context in which the consumer's personal data was collected pursuant to I, and not further processed in a manner that is incompatible with those purposes. So the important part here is this with reasonable expectations, because this is the rulemaking that California did. So I'm going to go down, if I can, down here to 2A. Which is on page 35. As used in the subsection, reasonable expectations of the consumer shall be based on the following: the relationship between the consumer and the controller, the type, nature, and amount of the consumer's personal data that the controller seeks to collect, the source of the consumer's personal data and the controller's method for collecting it, the specificity, explicitness, prominence, and clarity of information provided to the consumer about the purpose for collecting the consumer's personal data, and the degree to which the involvement of processors and third parties in collecting or processing of the consumer's personal data that is apparent to the consumer. So these are intended to give controllers a roadmap of how to comply with the statute. So again, this is on page 35. And I'm not, is it word for word California rulemaking? I don't know that.
I don't know, Rick. Just mixing both of them
So to
together.
go back to our first. I have a relationship with a vendor, some kind of, pay massage, who wants to be able, with a loyalty program, who wants to give me a discount for my birthday. It's reasonable for me to expect that they would have that information and they should be comfortable having it, keeping it and storing it, but only selling it if I give them permission.
I would think so, but I'm not the arbiter. I'm not the arbiter. Yeah.
I'm so much trying to do real life situation in these very legalese bills.
I think it is helpful to have those examples, like the California rules. They talk about the flashlight
Yeah.
application where you don't expect them to track your geolocation. You just expect them to have, yeah, maybe your username, your email, right? That's reasonable stuff. But these other data collections maybe are not in line with what you expect out of the business.
Yeah, so that's all California.
Roughly, right? I mean, that was the intent of the language, was to match what California did. Connecticut attempted something, but it's not, in my opinion, as helpful legally as what this would be. And you can disagree about the words here,
No,
right?
no, I just-
Yeah, you can.
Totally, yeah. I would say, so California has regulations that update their stuff and they have rules making, so they're constantly updating all their stuff. So it's a really long list of stuff. So this is trying to pick out
No,
basically like,
I remember
yeah.
they might have been the ones that have safe harbors too, California.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think so. Or they gave examples.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The
Okay.
rules give a lot of guidance.
Yeah, for sure.
that talk about the reasonable expectation.
So just to compare, let's see here. This is draft 2.3. So previously, it was a controller shall limit the collection and processing of personal data to what is reasonably necessary and proportionate to provide and maintain A and B.
And that was based off of Maryland. So we're going away from the strict Maryland standard and going to what companies already do with the California standard. But an interpret basically as close as we can get, since we don't have we're not having that whole list of we're not exactly copying California's entire list of regulations and rulemaking. So we're trying to take the highlights basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael?
But it's not the Connecticut version.
It's Connecticut was trying to base their stuff off of California.
But it's not Connecticut, right?
It's not Connecticut.
It's not Connecticut. Okay, B, so we're still a controller shall obtain the consumer's consent in accordance with the subchapter before processing their data for any purpose that does not meet the requirements in A1, provided that the consumer may withdraw consent at any time, and further provided that the methods for obtaining consent under the subdivision shall be easy to understand, offer symmetry and choice, not use language or interactive elements that are confusing to the consumer, not use choice architecture that impairs or interferes with the consumer's ability to make a choice and be easy to execute.
So would this fall under like, they have these pop-ups where you have this big, huge button that says, let us sell your data, and then a little teeny checkbox that says, no, we don't want you to.
Exactly.
Would that kind of cover this?
I believe that's the intent, right? It's all matter,
Okay.
the details matter. That example seems like yes. That's
That's what
right,
I was
right.
hoping for.
And that's new language, not Connecticut. I will indicate that in the highlights. C, may process or transfer the personal data of a consumer collected pursuant to A1 to provide targeted advertising. Something was deleted.
Or first party.
There was something deleted also in online 9.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was or first party advertising.
Oh, okay. This.
Minus.
Okay, yeah, so this was deleted, first party advertising was deleted.
And it doesn't include minus?
Right, because Connecticut actually does that later in another one of their minimization pieces, so it was duplicative.
If they used to be.
So in C, sorry, I'm totally. This is.
It's on opting out of targeted advertising are small.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Speak that.
So there is a provision on minors data here that. No, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Which is elsewhere. It's duplicative. That's why C was removed. Okay. Moving down.
Oh, hold on, Rick, go back. Okay, no, it's changed in the previous one. Never mind.
In D, shall language is added at the end, shall establish, implement, and maintain reasonable administrative, and I got 5 minutes left, just everyone knows. Technical and physical data security practices to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility of personal data appropriate to the volume and nature of the personal data at issue, including disposing of personal data in accordance with a retention schedule that requires the deletion of personal data when the data is required to be deleted by law or is no longer necessary for the purpose for which it was collected or processed, provided that with respect to any processing of sensitive data, such reasonable data security practices shall include at minimum compliance with the most recent privacy and cybersecurity frameworks for the components of the controller's information systems that process, store, or transmit sensitive data, or that provide protection for such components. So this is a defined term. This is the NIST. I'll scroll down to where that's defined. Privacy and security, cybersecurity frameworks means the National Institute of Standards and Technology Privacy Framework version 1.0, published January 2020, as well as the Cybersecurity Framework version 2.0, published February 2024, or any successor versions thereof. I understand this was a committee discussion about the NIST, right?
Yeah, that was something that was very important to me.
So again, not Connecticut, but happy to highlight that to indicate it's not. No change to processing or collecting sensitive data. F, this is Connecticut. I recall this. Not the way they structured this. We had something similar, but structured via Connecticut. Not process personal data in violation of any laws of the state that prohibit unlawful discrimination against consumers. And it goes on. I won't read that word for word. Or federal law that prohibits unlawful discrimination against consumers. So state and federal laws preventing discrimination. You cannot process personal data in that way. G and H, no changes. So G, no changes. H, under subdivision Romanet 2. So this is speaking about conflicting with laws. We have Kids Code taking effect January 1st, 2027. The language previously was so 7 shall not process the personal data of a consumer for the purpose of target advertising or sell the consumer's personal data if the controller knew or willfully disregards is a minor. So restructuring that a little bit, sell the minor's personal data. Again, starting up here. So the language hasn't changed. It's just kind of being reworded, H and I. So the kids code allows the selling of kids data if the minor isn't using a service that they are engaged in. It says that a covered business can collect, sell, share something else, minor's data, if it's a service that the child is engaged in, knowingly engaged in. So you can strike sell from kids code if you don't want that to happen. That's up to you all. Or you can do what's here, which is don't sell it unless you are compliant with the age appropriate design code provision, which is 2449A. Not every controller is going to be a covered business. But I imagine most covered businesses are controllers. So if the controller is a covered business and the minor is a covered minor, meaning they knew or should have known that the minor was minor, then they should be in compliance with the data privacy of the kids code statute. Any move on? Okay. We'll probably stop with this section and then, yeah. J, Romanet I, except as provided in subdivision 2, shall not process a consumer's personal data in a manner that discriminates against individuals or otherwise makes unavailable the equal enjoyment of goods or services on the basis of an individual's actual or perceived race, color, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, physical or mental disability, religion, ancestry, or national origin. And shall not apply to a private establishment, which is a prohibition against discrimination or segregation in place of public accommodation. Processing for the purpose of a controller's or processor's self-testing to prevent or mitigate unlawful discrimination, or processing for the purpose of diversifying an applicant, participant, or consumer pool. Is this Connecticut?
No, this is what we had in 1.3. This is civil rights language from Maryland that was on your chart that we went over with data minimization language.
No change to K. And then I already went over the definitions of reasonable expectations of the consumer and the privacy and cybersecurity frameworks. And I think that's probably a good stopping point for me.
How much is left, Rick?
There's considerable.
So let's mark this so we can continue on to finish this on Tuesday. And change the coloring will get changed. We'll get that to Jonathan so we can post that. We had that by Monday, right?
Yeah.
Versions out, just the coloring will be different, so everybody knows what's Connecticut, what's other in it, some version. Michael?
Yeah, regarding Tuesday, I'm not sure when you're scheduling this, but I have to be working the polls on Tuesday, the voting polls. We're voting on Tuesday, so
Aren't you lucky?
super excited.
I see that. Okay. So,
Looks like I'm being pushed back a little bit. If you want me to keep going, I can.
sure.
Up to you all.
Yeah. We'll keep going as far
Are you
as.
checking with Daphne, Jonathan, and just make sure? at Daphne at Senate Education. I had my email turned off during looks like until at least 2:30 or 2:40.
You have a hard stop at 2:30.
Okay. Okay. So I can, let me take my-
Let's keep going.
I closed everything, of course.
That was rash.
Oh, that was hopeful.
It makes you feel better, Rick, so do I.
Yeah.
So close
Okay.
everything.
While we have a moment, why are we focusing on being sure we know which came from where? I feel like now we're spending more time talking about where things came from rather than what it all been like. It's meant to be read start to finish and it getting confused. We're like,
We had talked about starting the baseline was 71 as it passed the Senate and then discussed what to, like the 2025 amendments to add and other things to add. So it's just getting really confusing to me to follow.
Yeah, I think in my mind, there was this issue around trying to choose some sort of base that you could refer to, from another state. So that's why the base, the way I understand it was, what in my mind, it is connected to 2045.
Mhm.
And I think that's most of that. Most of that yellow stuff, from what I heard, is 2025. Measurement.
I think but I mean, I think that, so, it does know where things came from.
I liked it. I liked it.
I mean, I think, your point is we're gonna have a bill from start to finish and it won't really matter.
Totally, but while we're considering what we want to add or not add, is, for me, it's helpful to know, well, has this been done somewhere?
okay, cool, thank you. We're all set.
Okay. Give a.
Cool. No,
Okay.
Okay, so going back to, we are, just to kind of bring it back, apologies for that. We are still in 2415E duties of controllers, subsection B limitations. So the word, subsection A of the section shall not be construed to no change to one, and then on two, there was language removed at the end of program that said, comma, provided that the selling of personal data is not a condition of participation in the program.
This was an area that this was import to civil society, but also causing a lot of friction with the business community. So it's the loyalty language that I said yesterday was going to be removed. So that's that.
Okay, privacy notice. The controller shall provide consumers with a reasonably accessible, clear, and meaningful privacy notice that includes the categories of data collected and processed by the controller. So adding collected. And then adding, including a separate list of categories of sensitive data collected and processed by the controller, described in a level of detail that provides consumers a meaningful understanding of the type of personal data collected and processed.
This is clarifying language from Colorado regulations. They also, similar to California, have regulations and rulemaking and continuously update their stuff.
Right. Moving down to D, this is still the privacy notice. The categories of personal data that the controller had previously shares with, this is now sells to. That is Connecticut.
Yeah.
I am confident of that one. Some of these stick out to me, some of them don't. Connecticut, 2025. G is new, brand new. A statement disclosing whether the controller collects, uses, or sells personal data for the purpose of training large language models. And H, the most recent month and year during which the controller updated the privacy notice.
So everything from page 37 that's highlighted through 39 to the target, I'll just stop at the target advertising piece. That's all Connecticut 2025.
Yeah, a lot of yellow coming up here. This is all, a controller shall make the privacy notice required under subdivision 1 publicly available through a conspicuous hyperlink. That includes the words privacy on the homepage of the controller's website, if they have a website. Like, for example, Connecticut says internet website, just one example of how Connecticut is not going to match up Vermont. We don't use the word internet website, just website. On the application, store page, or download page of a mobile device, if the controller maintains an application for use on a mobile device, and on the application settings menu, or in a similarly conspicuous and accessible location if they maintain an application for use on a mobile device. Through a medium in which the controller regularly interacts with the consumer, including mail, if they don't have a website. In each language in which the controller provides any product or service that is subject to the privacy notice, carries out any activity that is related to any product or service described in subdivision I, and in a manner that is reasonably accessible to and usable by individuals with disabilities. Whenever a controller makes any retroactive material change to the controller's privacy notice, the controller shall notify the consumers affected by such change with respect to any personal data to be collected after the effective date of such material change, provide a reasonable opportunity for the consumers described in A3 to withdraw consent to any further and materially different collection, processing, or transfer previously collected. Take all reasonable measures, electronic measures, to provide the notice set forth in the subdivision 3 to the affected consumers, taking into account the technology available to the controller and the nature of the controller's relationship with such affected consumers. Nothing in the subsection shall be construed to require a controller to provide a privacy notice that is specific to the state if the controller provides a generally applicable privacy notice that satisfies the requirements established in the subsection. No change to D, targeted advertising. E, providing consumers access to exercise rights. I changed that verbiage. That's why I highlighted it. Last time it said accessing consumer rights. Now it's worded differently. Not Connecticut.
Not me either.
I tend to pick that section.
Put that one red, Rick.
Put it in black.
But red is such a harsh color. I think it deserves
Rose?
rose. As long as
Rose.
black, not black rose. Couldn't read it. That's Friday. My brain is okay. 2. So we're looking at a controller shall provide means. That's right. Provide means for consumer to exercise their rights. The means that shall be provided shall provide a clear, conspicuous link on the controller's website to a web page that enables a consumer or an agent of the consumer to opt out of the processing of the consumer's personal data for purposes of targeted advertising or any sale of the consumer's personal data.
Connecticut 25.
Going from or sale to or any sale. 15.
Connecticut uses any all over. They use such an
It's such
engine.
a-
I don't even know if we need it in Vermont, but yeah, it's Connecticut.
Right, that's the kind of thing we're talking about here.
Yeah. Use it everywhere.
And what was the allow?
That was not later than January 1st, 2020.
That's right.
Since we're gonna make everything effective 18
Yes.
months out.
So yeah, and Connecticut also, because they passed their law years ago, removing not later than Jan 1, 2027 because of the effective. Okay, moving down. There was a not unfairly disadvantaged, another controller was removed.
And not make use of default settings.
those two
by the
are both-
Yeah,
So there were two provisions removed.
Colorado rulemaking.
So these two were removed.
Yep.
Colorado rulemaking. Okay, coming back. We're on section 2415 now, page 42. Processors' duties, contracts between controllers and processors. Okay, so Connecticut added the requirement for impact assessments in their 2025 amendments. So a lot of times you'll see and impact highlighted because eventually you'll see that these impact assessments are going to be required starting in July in Connecticut. So we are under the contractual terms. 1, a contract between the controller and a processor shall govern the processor's data processing procedures with respect to processing performed on behalf of the controller. The processor shall adhere to the instructions of the controller and only process and transfer the data it receives from the controller to the extent necessary to provide a service requested by the controller as set out in the contract.
This is unique, and as we heard in testimony on whatever day it was, Tuesday, and then I mentioned yesterday, there's I think this and maybe one other piece that are trying to clarify, basically when a small business or nonprofit or somebody uses other software, so they're the businesses or nonprofit is the controller, they might use HubSpot or MailChimp or Shopify or blah, 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 blah. And so those are processing their data. And so if the consumer tries to exercise their rights and or the controller is like hosting people's information on this processor, the processor shouldn't like basically abuse the data in a way that the business wouldn't expect. So the controllers got the relationship with the consumer, but then they're using this other software, and it's basically saying the software should basically be doing things respectfully and with the entity, the company that's relying on them to responsibly take care of their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page 40.
Remember that.
I don't remember if it was
No, I think
I don't remember who said it. There was somebody that was talking about the relationship between the
The controller and the processor. And what's the obligation of the processor?
to the controller and to the consumer.
So
Yeah.
this gets at that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like one other piece. I think that is also doing that same thing.
Okay, page, let's see, and maybe we'll stop here. Page 44, unless consent, this is new. Make sure where we are here. So we're under 3, the contract shall require that the processor. Yeah, this is new. Or it's been reworked. Unless consent is given by the consumer, be prohibited from combining personal data obtained from the controller with personal data that the processor I receives from or on behalf of another controller or person or collects directly from the consumer.
And so this, I forgot the example somebody gave. So this is from our 1.3. This is from what we had in May of 2025. And again, is like if services are using each other and there's basically a lack of once the consumer gives away their data, that it might be used in other purposes that they might not know. I talked to several different compliance privacy folks that said this is generally this language is fine, but it should be with consent in a way that the consumer might sometimes actually want a bunch of their stuff mixed up. And I can get an actual example for you. I just remember off the top of my head. I think there was something with Max software or something. But I can get that for people so they understand.
Okay, and there's no other change for the rest of this section, so we would maybe start on Tuesday with this 2415G. Might be a good place to stop.
Minutes for 10 pages. It's good to know.
Very good. Okay, committee. Thank you. We'll start. Do we have first thing Tuesday morning? 6:48. We'll be working on that. And you know that in the afternoon on Tuesday too. So I think we'll come back to this maybe Tuesday afternoon, but probably Wednesday morning. We need to get 6:48 taken care of, because that'll be on the floor for action on Wednesday, so we need to finish that. So we'll see how far we get with that. Hopefully, we get some of that done, we might be able to finish this block. And then hopefully we hear back from everyone of where everything sits with everyone. And if we need to make adjustments, we can start doing that too. Michael?
I appreciate that. I'm volunteering in the afternoon on Tuesday, so if we push this to Wednesday, that would be great for me. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Not that you were doing it for me, but
You mean? Of course we were. Okay, committee, thank you for another good week. Have a good weekend, get rested and for next week, and see you Tuesday at